Well, it's time for another Premier League preview and a game that could have been absolutely massive this weekend. Now it's even more important for Luton because they face Nottingham Forest in a depleted weekend of Premier League action. We're going to look ahead to that game in full, a relegation six-pointer. And of course, we'll also look ahead to the other fixtures that have survived in FA Cup quarter-final weekend. So get your predictions in the comments for Matchday 29. If you beat or match my score, you will get a shout out in the next recap. That'll be after the international break in a couple of weeks' time when we return with a full fixture list for the final weekend of March. But for now, we're looking ahead to Luton Forest. Two sides that are separated by 3 points. And at one point on Wednesday night, it was 0 because Luton 3-0 up at half time against Bournemouth and somehow clutched defeat from the jaws of victory. While of course our brave high pressing style has earned us plenty of plaudits in recent months, there is a point where you do feel that maybe you just have to shut up shop a little bit. And I know that's difficult with 5 centre-halves injured and 2 holding midfielders out. Nakamba would have been perfect for a game like this at 3-0. But unfortunately, Luton managed to lose 4-3 and it's the ultimate sucker punch. You can see the fact that everyone was so down and so deflated at the end, and understandably so. It's a rare feat to lose from 3-0 up. Albeit it did happen in my first ever full season following Luton Town at home. But this for me now becomes an even more important game as a result, because if Luton lose this Saturday against Nottingham Forest, I think that a lot of the belief will start to drain away both in and out of the dressing room after throwing away 3 points at Bournemouth, a 3-goal lead as well. To then be at home to Forest, and if the gap changes to 6 for them, that could negate any points deduction changes and whatever else if you worry about that. It's going to be very difficult. And of course, as we mentioned a minute ago, Luton are on a threadbare squad. Both of the natural, more holding midfielders out injured in Nakamba and Lokonga. Adebayo, the top scorer, out. Lockyer among 5 defenders missing. And God, that leadership was really missed on Wednesday night. And while the lads are giving everything, and while of course there's still plenty of entertainment and plenty of goals, which is often a struggle for promoted teams, it is becoming a little bit difficult. And you could see in the second half of that game, and to be fair, for a lot of the game against Palace, that there were tiring legs. We found a way to get a point in that one. Not quite the case on Wednesday night. So this is going to be a really important game against a Forest side who themselves are really struggling to score goals at the moment. A 1-0 defeat for them against Brighton means they are the side to catch for the bottom 3. And while Luton have had some really interesting and impressive days at home to Forest in recent seasons, we all remember that 1-0 in the year Forest went up via the playoffs. It is going to be a very difficult ask against a team that will have had a week off while we've played on Wednesday night and will ultimately have to put out virtually the same 11 unless there are any new returnees from injury. There are a few people that were struggling late on in that game, and I do think we might have to rotate a little. So I'll be intrigued to see how it goes. But what on earth do you predict for a game like this? Because Luton are going to be a threat from set pieces. Luton are going to be a threat on the counter. But at the moment, with all those defensive players out, we look so open to the break. And I do feel that that is going to be something that catches us out, particularly with the likes of Gibbs White, Awani, Hudson-Odoi, quality attacking players, Alanga, bags of pace as well. Of course, we all remember the reverse fixture where Luton came back from 2-0 down late on. That when Steve Cooper took off some of his star players later on, perhaps thinking the game was 1-2. But I really don't know what to go for in this one. And the question becomes, do you go for a scoreline that's going to be just stupid again, like it was against Bournemouth, like it has been so many times? Or do we go for a bit more of a cagey game? Because this one is between two sides that will now see 3 points as imperative. And Forest are not going to be the most open and expansive team in the league, given their recent form and given their recent struggle for goals. So I'd actually expect this one to be a much lower scoring game. I'd expect it to be quite cagey. And I would expect it to be a game where Luton perhaps struggle in the second half a bit with a lack of players. Only 4 senior outfield subs on the bench on Wednesday night. Another player limping off injured. It's become quite a difficult spell. I think this is going to be a low scoring game. There's part of me that thinks it. And for Luton, because of what happened on Wednesday, I feel it's a must win. There's a chance that if we don't respond in this one, certainly if we get turned over in a silly fashion, that people will start to feel we're down, because after the international break, it's Spurs away, it's Arsenal away, we've got City the week after that as well, following the Bournemouth reunion game. It's going to be quite difficult, isn't it? So I'm going to go for a low scoring game. I'm going to go for heart over head with a Luton win. Look, I've got the last couple right. Villa's 3-2 victory. I've got Bournemouth's win right in the end. So I'm going to go ambitiously for a Luton win. I'm going to go for Luton to win, remarkably, by 1-0. I just think it's going to be a really different game to what we saw on Wednesday night. Nottingham Forest will fancy their chances, and if they win it, they'll probably see the safety line as very close. But for me, I'm going for heart overhead for once this season, and almost a comedy pick after what we saw on Wednesday. After the 4-3 thriller, I'm going for 1-0 to Luton, and fingers crossed the 3 points will come, because it's going to need to happen soon. With that out the way though, let's get ahead to matchday 29 and predict the results for the other 3 surviving games this weekend. But before we do that, of course, as always, we've got to have a quick look back at matchday 28 and the midweek fixture. Now, matchday 28 for me was an interesting one. 8 points picked up overall. 2 perfect scores for United's win against Everton by 2-0, and Wolves' 2-1 win against Fulham. I also picked up a point apiece for the Arsenal and Brighton wins at home respectively. And you guys generally struggled as well. It was a difficult weekend. Most people had a West Ham win. Most people had a Crystal Palace win. Most people had a Bournemouth win. Those things didn't happen. But as a result of that, only one of you beat my score this week, although there was another that joined me on 8 points. Mitchell, one of the regulars, level with me, 8 points and 2 perfect scores. And Kurt, top of the pile, 9 points this time. 2 perfect scores for you as well. And 2 very good weekends in a row. In the midweek fixtures, I did get a point for a correct guess of a Bournemouth win against Luton, unfortunately. And while, of course, a few of you did predict a Luton win as well, nobody beat my score because 4-3, there weren't many people getting that were there. So with that done, let's move on to a slightly quicker prediction run through this weekend because only 4 fixtures have survived in matchday 29, loads of teams in FA Cup quarter-final action. There's a few teams at the bottom that are featuring, none more so in these first 2 games because Burnley faced Brentford in the first one, and I actually think Burnley are going to win this game. Brentford have been in a bit of freefall. Defensively, they look really poor in recent weeks. Away from home, they've struggled to stop conceding goals at times as well. And I just feel that despite the Ivan Toney effect, which was supposed to solve all problems, Brentford are in a little bit of trouble. And maybe along with Forest, the only team that Luton can look at catching. I do think Burnley will win this game. They've got to start taking chances, though. They played well at West Ham. Again, probably a sucker punch that they didn't win it. But I'm going to go for Burnley to nick that by 2-1. You know what I've gone for in the Luton game? Just fingers crossed. This heart overhead, a 1-0 victory for the Hatters. For Fulham Spurs, I was a little bit torn on this because Fulham have been very good at home in recent months. Tottenham Hotspur, looking back to their best, they were phenomenal at Villa, albeit they played into their hands a bit. And it just looked like with star players coming back, the likes of Son hitting form, Bentancur playing well, Johnson improving all the time, Kulusevski firing as well. Combined, of course, with the fact that they've got their first choice centre midfield and centre half partnerships back in the team too. I just think they're going to nick this one. So I'm going to go Spurs by 2-1. And the final game of the weekend between 2 sides that will probably have a fair amount of focus on Thursday night. West Ham 1-0 against Freiburg at the time of recording here. And Villa 0-0 after the first leg against Ajax. I'm recording this prior to their games on Thursday night, so I cannot factor that into the score here. And that's kind of why I've sat on the fence. I think both teams will be fatigued. Hopefully, for an English point of view, both teams will be through in their respective competitions. And I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline in the Premier League. West Ham United 1, Aston Villa 1. But those are just my predictions for matchday 29 in the Premier League. A slightly deflated Luton preview after what happened against Bournemouth. But let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Give me your score predictions for matchday 29. And anyone who beats or matches my score will get a shout out in the recap in a couple of weeks' time. If you missed them, we had our Championship weekend predictions yesterday. You can find those up in the eye above. And keep your eyes peeled very soon for the League One shorts for this weekend. Our predictions coming for that one soon as well. If you enjoyed this video though, please do put a thumbs up on it, subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with everything from the podcast. We've got more to come next weekend from non-league day, and of course we've got plenty to come as the run into the season is here in the Premier League and EFL after the international break. Thank you very much for watching though, your support as always is appreciated, and fingers crossed at the weekend it'll be a better experience as a Luton fan. I'll see you next time to find out if it has been, but for now, have a good weekend. We'll see you here again next time.